But let's get into the tactics board and see the avenues that Spurs can hurt this Arsenal team.
Yeah, and it's this is how we expect kind of both teams to set up in this one. It's obviously a match-up in kind of formation-wise, but both teams kind of play the formation a bit differently to each other. Obviously, what's quite interesting is with Arsenal, we're predicting Tomiyasu to play here. Now, when Zinchenko plays, you do a lot of the time find him in kind of this position here. He tucks inside a lot more and he gets involved in midfield. Tomiyasu and Kiwior not so much. They like to stay out wide. They like to protect their backline and not leave their backline as exposed. So if I'm looking at Tomiyasu, I'm expecting him to kind of hold the width a bit more, not kind of get involved. And what that could do is if we are tucking inside, especially the likes of Porro tucking inside here, that could leave a bit more of an outnumbering for Tottenham in these kind of situations. I'm hoping, especially if Kulusevski does like to get involved like he does, albeit we prefer him to hold the width. But we know that if Sarr breaks into these kind of spaces, Porro likes to tuck inside to these kind of spaces right here. If Tomiyasu is going to stay in that position, hopefully that can play into our advantage, and that's something we can do. But the problem is, on this side here, with Ben Davies on this side, I don't know if we want him tucking in these situations.
We don't.
Because the problem is that leaves Saka with so much space. It leaves Van de Ven a lot of space to cover. And Saka can really exploit that space down the line if we ever get caught in a transition and Davies is caught here or even up here. That would be a big, big problem for us.
Yeah, and in terms of what you're saying about Kulusevski and Tomiyasu, if it is Kulusevski up against Tomiyasu on that side, I think that's a positive for us, because I think as well Kulusevski can probably drag Tomiyasu a bit out of position, which would leave a gap. And if it does leave the gap, who's going to exploit that space if Kulusevski is dragging Tomiyasu in?
Yeah, that's the thing. And if Porro's inside, he's not going to be around here, which I like Porro in these situations. He's got great delivery, but
could be Sarr, you know.
What I would like is for us to be smart, because what I like is, you know, we talk about constantly, we rotate, right? It's all about someone being in that position, and it's not so much who's there. It's all about someone being there. And as long as someone's there, it doesn't matter which player is. So I want to see us use those rotations smartly, so that when Porro's kind of cutting inside, actually it's Kulusevski there, and then Porro can kind of go in this position. And then obviously Sarr is still in that position, breaking forward, maybe like there. So that's kind of what I want to see in Spurs be smart about that if Kulusevski is starting. Obviously, when we have these two kind of inverted fullbacks in these positions, what it should do lead to Maddison and Sarr break into there, Kulusevski technically and Johnson potentially there holding the line. Now, what's interesting is if we do kind of do that, I was looking at Arsenal's average positions here. We can see it here. So this is, if you look at their average position, let's say against Villa, right? Blah blah blah. You can see Zinchenko's tucked in. Ben White is in his own half, but look how high Saka, Trossard are. You got Jesus and Havertz, almost like a strike partnership up there with Odegaard in behind. And obviously pretty much leaving Gabriel and Saliba up at the back, quite exposed in the wide areas if possible. But that is how they set up at home to Villa. But then you look at their average position when they went away to Man City. I thought this was quite interesting. Look how deep they are. No, only Havertz is inside the opposition half average position. They are very, very deep. The whole back line has dropped. Kiwior is very deep and not cutting inside. Jesus is the left winger. Look how deep he is in that side. Saka's inside his own half as well. All three centre midfielders are inside their own half. So there was a big shift in how they approach the game. So it'd be interesting to see in this one whether they are going to approach it more like the Villa game, where they're pushing the full-backs up, leaving Gabriel and Saliba with a lot of space, or whether they do approach it like they did against Man City, where everyone's dropping back and they're playing very kind of resolute. And if they do that with Havertz up front, are they going to have that ability in the transition, apart from Bukayo Saka, to really break our get our back four? Because if it is Trossard, Saka, and Havertz, there's not too much searing pace in that forward line apart from Saka there.
I mean, Saka's fast. Trossard's a very tricky customer.
He's not fast.
I mean, he's not like searingly fast. He's not like Van de Ven fast, but he's still got a bit of pace about him, you know what I mean? And he's a very dangerous player that has a lot of quality and trickery as well. So in terms of what you're saying, yeah, fine, he's not the fastest guy in the world, but he's still got pace about him. It's not like he's slow.
Is he faster than someone like Kulusevski? I think he's got similar kind of pace to him. Like, I don't think he's there. I don't think he's the quickest kind of player. He's not a player where over 30 yards, I would be worried that no one's catching up to him. Saka's different. Havertz is kind of slow. Trossard is good. I feel like Trossard is really good when he's coming up against low blocks and he's got that nimble trickery to find a gap, find that bit of quality. When the space is a bit open, I think I wouldn't say he struggles, but he's not like the biggest threat like a Martinelli or a Saka in those positions, I feel. So I wonder how, if they do play Martinelli, because they know we're going to leave a lot more space in those positions, but Trossard has just been so effective recently, you can't really not leave it. You can't leave him out.
I mean, Martinelli's had a really poor season. He just hasn't kicked on whatsoever from last year, but he's still young. I do expect him to turn it around after this season, but he just hasn't been effective whatsoever. I mean, I think he scored like 1 goal in the last like 15 games or something like that, which by his standards from last season, the standards that he's set, is nowhere near good enough. And that is why Trossard is getting the nod at the moment, because he's just so much more effective. And I do fear for Trossard getting in behind with the space that Porro does leave, and he might not need that pace to really hurt us.
Yeah. I think Porro would be more worried about Martinelli than he would about Trossard, in my opinion. I think Porro will back himself in a one-on-one situation against Trossard when there's a lot of space. But Porro, Martinelli, who's got that searing pace to really get him, I think he would be a lot more worried about Martinelli getting in behind him than he would Trossard. But the problem is, I feel like Trossard with the ball at feet in this kind of situation, if he's one-on-one like down the byline, like here, in these kind of situations, Porro's coming out to him, that's where I think Porro will be more worried about Trossard, because then when he's close to him, he can get a bit of trickery to go inside or outside. He doesn't mind going either way, Trossard, and Porro might find himself in difficulty defending those kind of situations. So it's going to be interesting to see how we combat that. But hopefully, I do wonder how we go about. Will Andrew adjust the system a bit? Because in this kind of way, if you've got Arsenal in their positions there, you know, Jorginho potentially, or it could be even Partey in the six. But
he looked very good coming on against Chelsea, didn't he?
He did. You got Havertz, who drops in as a potential another midfield player as well. So when we're in possession, obviously it's going to look hopefully something like. This is how it usually looks like, with Basuma there, Porro tucking in, Davis tucking in, Sarah Maddison pushing up, Johnson getting wide, Kulusevski getting wide, Son looking to exploit that space. So we will potentially have them outnumbered in the centre here, but if Havertz drops in, all of a sudden that helps balance things out again, and that's where we can really struggle. Obviously, Rice is so effective in these positions. He's going to make sure that Basuma is not getting any influence. But I think Jorginho, if he starts, could be someone we can definitely target, because he's a very good tactical player. He's very good on the ball, but I think he struggles a lot to cover the ground if you stretch him. So if Maddison can really try kind of pick up these kind of areas around here, make sure he's drawing Jorginho out, hopefully I can leave spaces around for Sarr to fill into, Basuma to fill into, and we can kind of take advantage of that. The problem is Sarr and Basuma are just not the most creative, so if they get on the ball, they need to up their game and their quality, because they need to exploit that kind of space.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about Saliba and Gabriel, because obviously a lot has been made about them this season, both of them having absolutely brilliant seasons. But there has been a bit of something with Gabriel recently. When the big games, when the pressure comes, he can be found wanting a little bit, making stupid decisions, making silly passes. So is he someone that maybe we can target in the press to maybe press him into making a few mistakes?
Yeah, I think we need to ruffle his feathers a bit. I think we need to get into his face. I think if you can press him, I think he's shown recently he's liable to making a mistake. And against Bayern, he gave the ball away for the first goal, I believe. Against Aston Villa, he was a bit all over the place on a few occasions when being pressed. And he definitely got that out of the system a bit recently, albeit, well, I'd say against Chelsea, Nicholas Jackson had a one-on-one, a lot to do with Gabriel struggling in that kind of a situation as well. And obviously Jackson ended up missing, but yeah, recent weeks, Gabriel hasn't quite been on it. He's a bit similar to Romero. He's the one who likes to be a bit of a bulldog. He gets in your face. He's the one who plays very aggressively. So when he's a bit off his game, all of a sudden he can be got at, and he leaves a lot of space when he's off because he confronts you. A bit like Romero, when he misses it, bam, there's all that space to go into. Obviously, Saliba is usually very good at covering that space, so that's why they don't get exploited as much. But definitely, Gabriel in recent weeks has not been at the same level he has been. Obviously, he's a massive threat from set pieces. That's been his biggest attribute this season. I think he's got a lot of goals. He's been very effective. But in recent weeks, when teams have put him under pressure, he's faltered a bit. So hopefully we can do the same.
In terms of where teams have had joy against Arsenal in recent weeks is when the teams beat their press right, when Odegaard, Havertz, Rice, a few players like that are caught up the field when from playing out the back. And what I did notice, and I think I mentioned it in the panel show, is that Odegaard likes to occupy two players within the starting press, whether it be a defender in the left back or a defender in the midfielder. And what other teams have been doing, what Bayern Munich did, they got, as soon as the goalkeeper had it, Dyer sprinted out wide to create that space. So Odegaard was stretched, but too much to cover two players. Wolves did it as well. How are Spurs going to be able to complement that?
Yeah, the problem is we usually start our build-up like with Van de Ven and Romero very close to Vicario, and then we try and find Porro. We start nips in, we try and kind of create triangles, and then we try and build up. Obviously, Arsenal are one of the best pressing teams in the Premier League. They're very, very aggressive in their pressing way of pressing. As you say, Odegaard usually here. He press it. They usually press quite high up. You got Saka here pressing because he's very, very young. He can cover very quickly a couple of positions. So what Bayern, as you say, they did. If this was Eric Dyer, he went all the way here, which meant Odegaard had a lot of space to cover in between the centre back, into the centre back and the full back kind of thing. So it was very, very difficult for him to cover that space so intensely and so quickly compared to when teams have, like, say, a centre back here, when they're a lot closer together, you can cover both positions. So I do wonder if Spurs have been keeping note of that. If Spurs are going to adjust their build-up, so Van de Ven goes a bit deeper, you got Davis a bit higher, Johnson a bit higher, so it makes their pressing a lot less effective. We saw definitely at the Emirates early on, we got caught a few times with our pressing, with our build-up, Arsenal were very, very effective in their pressing in the early exchanges of the North London derby back at the Emirates. So hopefully we have learned from that, and hopefully we have learned from how teams have gone about things recently. And maybe if we've taken some notes and some pointers, we can make Arsenal's pressing less effective and start playing through them. What I've noticed as well is, like, the teams like Wolves and Chelsea even and Bayern Munich, is they were able to break through their press, but a lot of the times they didn't take full advantage, especially Wolves and Chelsea, a lot because, first of all, Arsenal was still a very good defensive team, but also they had a bit of a lack of quality in the forward line. But we have that quality in the forward line, so hopefully that can make a lot of the difference in this game. When we are able to break their press, we can make it count with the likes of Son, Maddison, and Kulusevski in the forward line. That can make all the difference when it comes to this game. So it's going to be very, very difficult when Arsenal do have the ball as well. When they are in possession, I expect them to set up something like this. Havertz there, Saka out wide, keeping the width, Trossard up there, Tomiyasu and Ben White overlapping Saka, Jorginho around these areas. What it means is these areas in the wide area. So Davis is going to be back there, Van der Ven here. So Saka's going to be there. Johnson's going to have to be watching Ben White. Kulusevski's going to have to be watching Tomiyasu. But in these transitions, what we're going to have to do is have Son just running these channels down here. Or it's going to be very difficult, but maybe through the centre it's going to be very difficult. But if he can run those channels and kind of make sure he's holding the ball up for our forward players, that's where we're going to get a lot of joy, because they leave a lot of space down those channels here. Arsenal, especially when they're in possession and they're kind of in transition. So it's going to be very, very interesting. One, if we can catch them on the ball and making sure they're not keeping possession, sustaining attacks. We've got the likes of Maddison who could thread those balls into a Son in behind, and with his pace, he can hopefully get in behind and hurt them.
All right, so there you have it. That is the tactical roundup. Spurs v Arsenal. That is the way that Spurs can combat Arsenal's press, the way Spurs can hurt Arsenal. But there are also many avenues where Arsenal can hurt us as well. So it's going to be a very interesting tactical battle up against Ange Postecoglou and Mikel Arteta this weekend. But that is your tactical preview. Sim has gone for 2-1 to Tottenham Hotspur this weekend. I've gone for 2-2. Both results do all but end Arsenal's title hopes. But thank you everyone for watching the tactical roundup.